vision, leadership, workplace-related topics. The Voices of Victory podcast show. Subscribe today. Let's go.
Vision, leadership, self-esteem, workplace-related topics.
Subscribe.
The Voices of Victory podcast show.
Voices of Victory.
Vision,
Voices of Victory.
leadership,
Voices of Victory.
workplace-related topics.
The Voices of Victory.
Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory.
It's time for the show. You are now listening to the Voices of Victory podcast show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mario D. Leo.
And welcome to Voices of Victory podcast. I am Mario D. Leone. Welcome aboard. We are going to talk about the psychological agency, the concept of agency. Now, people believe that they lack agency, not because they truly have no options, but because they're conditioned over years, even generations, to doubt their actual power. Matter of fact, the more narrow the point of view, the less options you will perceive. It's that simple. So from childhood, many are taught to prioritize obedience over curiosity, or conformity over instinct, and security over self-trust. And that is just passed down. This is just conditioning that's been literally passed down. And you add that to the influence of trauma and barriers, environmental barriers, an environment that actually punish risk. If you take a risk, that you get punished for it, and you get nervous, and your whole brain gets wired to freeze and be afraid rather than actually choose. And agency is all about that choice. I'm going to break down what that means. So simply put, in psychology, agency refers to your capacity, your capacity or other individuals with their capacity to act independently, to make your own choices, to exert control over your life. It is the sense of being. It's understanding that you are the author of your actions and the author of your decisions, rather than being passively shaped by external forces or circumstances. So what we can understand is agency is linked to the idea of self-determination, autonomy, and taking personal ownership and responsibility for your life as much as you can, as much as you possibly humanly can. There's always barriers and difficulties with that, but as much as you possibly can. So here's the raw truth, and I'm going to say it twice. Most people mistake survival strategies for personal traits. Let me say that again. Most people mistake survival strategies for personal traits. They're not passive, they're protecting themselves. And beneath the quiet silence, the hesitation, the fear, and the shrinking, there's a voice that never agreed to disappear from your head. So we have to understand that our work here on the show is your work, and it's to help people hear that voice again. And this is where agency actually lives. So I'm going to go over this concept, because the bottom line is you have agency. You just feel like you don't. And that's where people feel like they have no choice. And by the way, the more they feel they have no choice, the more angry they become. The levels of anger will hit a number 10. All you got to do to make somebody really upset is take away their freedom, take away their choices. Like, don't give them any choice at all. And they'll become angry very quick, because you take people's independence away. And you don't want to do that. You want to allow people to grow, allow people to have that agency. Now let's flip the script on this. Literally, let's flip the script. So the first concept is the myth of no time. When people say, I have no time, there's no time. Okay, let's understand the flip side of that is that time is a boundary, not a villain. And stepping into your leadership or stepping into your ownership is how you actually protect that time. And you have to buy yourself time. You've seen it in movies before. Come on, let's be real. That people would find ways to buy time by taking a certain action that would somehow compress time for them. Now, granted, that's a movie. but in reality, it's still a concept. Finding ways to buy yourself more time. Very important. The next one is fear. The fear behind, I don't know how, right? Again, people feel they don't have a choice, so they say, I don't know how. Ignorance isn't failure, it's a doorway. All right? And people who are leaders walk through it. People that take ownership of their life actually walk through it. If you don't know how, and nowadays, I mean, come on, YouTube is real. I don't know how to invest in stock. It's all over YouTube. Really? Is it not under your nose? And that's the thing. It's a phrase that just stems from fear and makes people feel like they have no choice. And by the way, it doesn't have to be stock investing. If you're a person that poo-poos on the stock market, that's fine. I don't care. But it may not be about that. It could be just about going to school for a certain career and you feel like, I don't know how. Ignorance isn't failure. But when you ignore, ignorance comes from the word ignore. When you ignore the possibility, that's ignorance. Now, another one is when saying yes is self-betrayal. So yes, there is indeed a high cost of people-pleasing, and you have to reclaim your no, because that restores your power. In other words, people that are always saying yes to others, and they're betraying themselves. They say yes to this, yes to that person, yes to everyone. And you know what? You betray yourself. You betray yourself to people-pleasing. You have to reclaim your no, because it restores your power, period. Let's talk about control versus influence, right? People will say, oh, you don't need control to lead. Well, influence is quieter and far more powerful. Influence is far better than control. That much I will tell you. Now, another one is speaking up. In terms of speaking up, your voice is not a negotiation. Okay, speaking up isn't about being heard. It's about not vanishing. Okay? Because what happens when you don't speak up is you literally blend into the background like a chameleon on a brick wall. So your voice is not a negotiation. Speak up. Be heard. But if you're not heard, you'll vanish. And you have the choice of agency to speak up. If you're terrified, that's something you have to work on. Now, another one is that not everyone has to understand me. Not everyone has to understand who I am. So, if you're a leader and you're leading, someone's going to misunderstand you. Let them. People sometimes feel the need to misunderstand you just to annoy you. And guess what? Someone's going to misunderstand you. Let them. Let them. Let them. Because the bottom line is you can explain something, but you can't learn it for them. You can explain something, but you can't understand it for them. That's the truth. Let's talk about exhaustion. People get exhaustion, and guess what? Exhaustion is a messenger. But what you need to understand is fatigue isn't a weakness. It's a clue. It's a clue. It's a signal telling you and your soul where you are and what you need to do to preserve your energy. So if you're constantly burning yourself out, maybe, just maybe, self-care is a choice for you. Then we have the trap of, this is just who I am. Oh, I love this one. This is just who I am, right? Your identity isn't fixed. Stop it. Okay, it's permission-based. Give yourself a new permission. Try that for a change. This is just who I am. This is who I am. It's an excuse. It's like when people are extremely blunt, they say, that's just who I am. That's how I talk. No, your identity isn't fixed. It is permission-based. Give yourself a new one. Give yourself an opportunity to maybe have some grace in your speech rather than being blunt all the time. Now, keep in mind, there are times for yes, when bluntness is appropriate. There is. However, there's nothing stopping you from improving your communication. There's nothing stopping you from that, unless it's you. I don't have a desire. Great. Keep going the way you're going. That's fine. That's your choice. Decisions. Let's talk about the next one. Decisions are spiritual acts. That's another theme, right? It's like every yes and no shapes your future. Just understand that. That's agency in action, right? every yes and no shapes your future. That is your agency. That is your choice. And people wait for clarity. This is the overthinkers. They stop waiting for clarity because clarity doesn't come first. Movement does. You have to figure it out on the way. And that's so important. Now, there is the concept of stuck. There's the illusion of stuck theme, right? Stuckness is usually a story, and you can rewrite it. When people say, I feel stuck, they usually refer to emotions, making them feel that way, and the perception of the options that are in front of them. Maybe there's not enough perceptions, or maybe they need to really broaden their point of view so they can see more options, because the more narrow you look at things, the more narrow the choices are in front of you. Seeing the tree or the forest. Another one is, you're not lazy, you're unaligned, right? So what does that look like as a theme, right? What looks like procrastination is just often resistance in disguise, usually going to the wrong path. So you have to understand that principle. It appears that way. And emotional resistance is actually a thing. Emotional resistance can actually make a person lazy. Because it's easier to stay status quo. It's easy to sit in bed and do nothing. It's the simple choice. The hard choice is getting up at 5 a.m. and working out. That's hard. People don't want to do that. That's fine. Pick and choose if you will. Let's talk about peace, right? Peace isn't always quiet. That theme. Sometimes peace is a boundary, and sometimes it is walking away. Like, do we really have to engage in every single problem? Granted, there is such a thing as self-defense. I understand. I study martial arts. I get it. There are ways where you have to defend yourself. I understand. But can you have a peace of mind as a choice? Or do you constantly cling to FOMO or fear of missing out rather than joy of the moment? Having some sense of joy. And I'm not talking about ignorance is bliss. I'm talking about being content and happy on the inside without chasing everything external outside of you. Let's get that straight. And shrinking in fear doesn't make you noble. Okay? Playing it small doesn't serve others and it doesn't serve you. It just makes you resentful. Keep that in mind. You have agency to play it a little bit bigger. You just choose not to. And that's another one, like the person that I need permission to evolve. No, you don't need permission to evolve. Growth doesn't require a committee vote. Let's just get that clear. Let's talk about responsibility now. Responsibility isn't blame. We've heard that before. No, you can take ownership of your life without actually blaming yourself or blaming other people for everything. Okay, you can. You have the agency to do so. It's easy. It's easy to get hung up in finger point and finger point and finger point and finger point, but that finger rarely points back at you. Right? Rarely. Let's talk about fear. Fear literally is a terrible compass. Okay? What feels safe isn't always right. So you have the agency or choice to choose some risks when it actually matters, or at least learn to mitigate risks to the best of your ability. Let's talk about boundaries. Every boundary is a bridge to self-respect. Don't you ever forget it, right? Saying no is a yes to something more honest. So when you have a boundary, it can bridge you over to your own self-respect. So every time you say no, it is a yes to something more honest or something that will help you actually grow. And people say, oh, I can't say no. No, you have the agency to say no. You're not exercising it. And of course, the most powerful person in the room feels like themselves theme, right? Understand that, please understand this, that psychological agency isn't about having power over others. It's about being fully you and being authentic, no longer hiding parts of who you are. Let's get that through. I'm not through, by the way, with this whole thing. And we're halfway through this. I am not through with you yet. And like they say, but wait, there's more. We're going to talk a little bit on environment, how the environment comes in there, right? And people say, I can't leave this job. This is just how it is, right? Yeah, okay. I have to live in this neighborhood theme, right? Location is real. I get it, but so is your ability to reimagine how you relate to your space. and how you could find another way. People know people who know people who know more people. So start connecting to many people. You may not be able to do it alone. You may not be able to do it yourself. But if you're going to say, I'm stuck here, then you decide that fate for yourself. It's going to be hard to get out of some of these neighborhoods because income has to change before everything else. I get it. I get what you're saying. But you have agency. That's the point of this episode. You have choices. And you will not be able to see the myriad of choices in front of you or be able to swallow your pride and be able to see more options, because the more narrow your point of view, the more narrow your choices are. It's really simple. You can only see choices that you're open and willing and ready to actually see and be accepted, because it's all about reticular activating system. Okay? Very important, which you can catch my other episodes on that. Now, let's talk about, this is the best I can get. There's another one. This is the best I can do, the best I can get. Settling is not safety. It's fear clothed up in disguise. This is the best I can get. This is the best I can do. Really? Do you believe you have agency? Do you believe you have choices, or you just choose to not see anything else? I can't afford to move, right? Sometimes agency means creating change before it's fully affordable. All right, let me explain that again. Sometimes agency means creating change before it's fully affordable, meaning that you may have to change you. In order for life to get better, your mind has to get better. And in order for your mind to get better, that's going to take some hard work. And then once your mind gets better, then guess what? Other things can get better. Your mind is the GPS of your life. You work on that, other things will improve as a result. So agency means creating change before it's fully affordable. You may have to change lots of things about you to earn the income wage that you can so you can get out of where you are. It's hard, very hard. I understand. Listen, I'm not saying this is easy, but I am saying you have the choice. You have the agency. We just pretend we don't. Let's talk about the people around me don't get me, right? Your growth isn't contingent on your environment or other people. But you know what? You might actually outgrow those people. And you might actually outgrow that environment. And that's the thing. You may be afraid to outgrow that environment. There's a fear. You got to remember, change is uncomfortable. And people hang on to the past like an old, comfortable sneaker. Right? So if you're afraid to grow, or we could look at it like you're afraid to let go of what no longer serves you. Right? Another one is, this job pays the bills, team. Okay, first of all, you're not a paycheck, and money isn't the only form of currency. There are skills, there are other things out there. All right? You have agency. You have choice. Again, people feel that they don't. They've been so convinced through the conditioning and outside parties. You got to remember, every belief that you have came from outside of you. You acquired it from somewhere. It did not come from you. You adopted it. So if you feel that you have no choice, then that is the fate that you will be met with. Because understand, fate is what happens to you, but destiny is what you can change. That's what's important. Another one is, everyone here thinks small. The big minds don't need big rooms. They need brave thoughts and brave hearts. So yes, if you're thinking small, you got to start getting into your heart, stepping into that bravery, start having some new thoughts, and start thinking a little bigger. This is another one. Oh, this is my only option. No, that's the only option you may see. Agency is there. It's never the only option. It's just the one that you're most familiar with. Either that or your point of view is incredibly narrow. And if it does happen to be that last option out of 7 million, then acceptance is going to be a key thing. However, that doesn't mean you can't change it tomorrow, or at least try to find another way. So yes, that's what it's all about. And people say, oh, I grew up like this, team. No, the past shaped you, but it doesn't own you. Generational cycles can be broken. right? People like me don't get out of here. Yeah, this is one that was actually told to the martial artist Jeff Thompson. Like, people like you don't become authors. And you know what? That helped him push past that belief because he wanted to be an author, and he became a very successful one. So keep that in mind. When people say, they'll say that I changed. Good. Change is a sign you're living. It's a sign that you're living. It's a sign that you're making a difference. If you make other people cringe, good. You know why? Because there's growth. There's discomfort with growth. And if they cringe, that's part of the discomfort. At least you know you're growing. So if you make other people cringe, good. That means you're growing. Another one is, if I leave, I'll be alone. There's another one. Loneliness is temporary, and being unseen is permanent if you never leave. Some people can choose isolation. Now, keep in mind, you could use isolation as a means to like recharge your batteries and stuff. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to face the world. You're going to have to visit the supermarket, right? That's the thing. You're going to have to move into that extroversion. Life will pull you out of it, whether you like it or not. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this series. Keep in mind, this is a reminder. These aren't things that are so rigid, because you want to create choices for yourself. Sometimes there's that situation where there's one choice or the last known choice, right? And sometimes you might have to create other choices, right? Through other people, through connections, through networking. You may have to create more choices. Agency is that you have that choice. And if you feel that you have no choice, you have to start creating more choices. Let's discuss how we can do that. So the very first way to create more choice in your life is to clarify your values and clarify your goals. You have to reflect on your core values. There's people that say, I don't have any values. Well, we have to start looking at that. We have to look at the values and your aspiration. Write your goals down, and we have to break them down into steps as well. And it's important to prioritize those activities and those things, those choices that actually resonate with your personal values. So, for example, if health is a core value, you got to choose activities like meal prepping or regular workouts, even if it is just a couple days a week. We also have to look into what's called self-efficacy, building self-efficacy. You do that through small self-wins. Little wins there, okay? The small wins that you can do. Confidence in your ability to affect change, okay? And that's important, is that some people feel that they don't have the confidence. It's not always the choice. Sometimes it's a lack of confidence behind the choice, right? They don't feel confident to affect change in their life, to strengthen their sense of agency, right? So when you do set small, achievable wins, you create systems for success, you build momentum, right? When people celebrate successes, it reinforces progress. And of course, you can learn from setbacks and focus on improvement rather than perfection. Now, some people have multiple choices, but they'll choose like the worst ones, like the ones that are the shortcuts. They try to shortcut their way through life or try to throw themselves into negative situations because they feel the negative situation is a good choice. Expanding your knowledge and skills is another way to create more choices in your life, to take classes, read books, practice skills that empower you, and of course, seek out a mentor and connect to a community that can encourage some growth, right? So for example, a person might say, I have no choice. I'll never make any money. Well, learn financial literacy. Like, come out of your comfort zone, step out of your comfort zone, and talk to somebody that can help you manage your money and plan your future, right? Another thing is practice mindful decision making. Some people have multiple choices, but they choose the worst one, right? So you got to pause before making these decisions and consider the options, right? Use tools like a pro and con list to help you figure it out. And most of all, ask yourself, does this choice align with my goals? Yes or no? And an example would be like, if you're accepting a job offer, you got to consider like how far it is, How does it deal with gas? Am I getting enough benefits, right? How does it fit with my career aspirations and my lifestyle as well? And finally, creating agency is based off of emotional resilience, right? Strengthening your emotional resilience. So self-care has got to be number one. And then stress management is number two, and be able to reframe your thinking. If you have a negative experience, we have to be able to reframe that and look at some of these things as an opportunity to grow. And sometimes you may not see it. You might need the help of a counselor or therapist, but you get the idea. So instead of seeing failure as an end, view it as feedback to just adjust your strategy and actually go again. So as you can see, we all have agency. Most people believe they don't. They've been conditioned to believe that there's no other choice. Have a great day. See you on the next episode.